Today and every day, you are doing the impossible in a time that's been completely unpredictable. You're doing it with so little time and under so much pressure.
Yeah, definitely.
You are juggling and jabbing, mobilizing and modernizing, remote learning and emphasis on the learning.
Sorry, guys. I don't know how to turn this thing off.
You are traveling and transforming, researching and resilienting. Okay, that's not a word, but you know what I mean. You are watching and welcoming, opening and, oh, wait, now you're closing, and now you're opening again. For businesses around the world, it's a real challenge because increasing disruption comes with increasing complexity and an increasing need to have today's problems solved yesterday. That's why businesses are rethinking everything. Using hybrid cloud and AI with IBM, they're working not just productively, but predictively. Automating processes to simplify the complex, keeping private data protected, and adapting to ever-changing consumer habits. In a year that was like no other, businesses are taking a scientific approach with IBM to invent, discover, and solve problems like no one else. There's a lot to do, but together, we've got this. Together, we push, prove, demo, dare, work, wow, solve, spark, think.
Good morning or good noon, everyone. I am attorney Mark Goriseta, managing partner of Goriseta Africa, Cauton and Saavedra, and vice chair of the ICT committee, the sponsoring committee for this general membership meeting of PHENEX. So some announcements before we start. Appreciate SD-WAN more and what it can do to reduce wide area network connectivity costs without compromising security, applications, and network performance. All this and more on the webinar organized by the ICT committee entitled Demystifying SD-WAN on August 25, Wednesday at 12 noon. This free event was made possible by Aruba, a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company, SonicWall Philippines, and VMware Philippines. Next, join the Arts Committee on August 27 as guest speaker, noted art collector, and recognized figure in the auction market, attorney Tonico Manahan, answers questions on art as a significant asset class in a webinar entitled Art Collecting, Passion Investment for All Time. PHENEX, together with the Makati Business Club, Management Association of the Philippines, and E22 Coalition, is hosting a virtual event on Why Should I Vote on August 27, Friday. Magparehistro or magpare-activate at bumoto sa darating na halalan. The Capital Markets Development Committee is inviting everyone to a free course on ABCs of green, social, sustainability bond issuance on August 24, Tuesday at 2 p.m. This is in partnership with KPMG RG Manabat & Co., International Capital Market Association, ADB, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Get bad with these PHENEX icons. Be bold, agile, and dynamic as they share relevant aspects of their career journey and how they have made things better and different. This is on September 3, Friday at 4 p.m. Save the date. The 2021 PHENEX Annual Conference is on October 4 to 8 with the theme Inclusive Disruption, Achieving a Sustainable Future in the New Frontier. A great lineup of speakers is being prepared by the committee for the week-long online event. If your CFO excels as a strategist, catalyst, steward, and operator, especially in this time of pandemic, then he or she may be the next ING CFO of the year. Deadline for nomination is extended until August 31, 2021. For more information about the coveted title and its nomination process, visit ingphenexcfooftheyear.com or contact MB Binluan at phenex.org.ph or call 0917-312-3044. PHENEX is happy to announce that the incentive program is back. Recruitment of new members and attendance and active participation in PHENEX activities and meetings will earn you discounts which can be applied to your 2022 membership fee. With enough recruits, your 2022 membership fee may be free. For inquiries, email the Secretariat. At this point, allow me again to acknowledge the generosity of PHENEX's year-round sponsors. Our partner, Union Bank of the Philippines, Platinum sponsor, LT Group Inc. and First Philippine Holdings Corporation. Diamond sponsor, Ayala Land Inc. Gold sponsors, United Auctioneers Inc., Converge IT Solutions Inc., SGV & Co., and Pilipinas Shell Petroleum Corporation. Our patron sponsors, Bank of the Philippine Islands, Certec Holdings Philippines Corporation, Mega World Corporation, Divina Law, and BDO Unibank Inc. We would also like to acknowledge KPMG RG Manabat & Co. for sponsoring this year's annual CFO survey project. Lastly, a very big thank you to IBM Philippines for today's GMM, for making today's GMM possible, and for gathering the best speakers and panelists for our topic, leveraging data and AI in finance. We are now streaming live in the Facebook and YouTube accounts of Phoenix. To all our Phoenix members, make sure that you stay until the end of the program as we raffle off exciting items for you. To formally open the program, may I call on our President, Attorney Francis Lim, to call this meeting to order. Attorney Lim.
Okay, thank you, Mark. May I now call our 8th General Membership Meeting to order. Okay. Will I
Thank
say
you.
the okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Francis. At this point, may I request everyone to join me in prayer and in singing thereafter of our national anthem. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering all of us today in this event. May you bestow your guidance and blessings on everyone present here today, especially the speakers and panelists, so that they may be able to share their knowledge and expertise for your glory and honor. Keep us all safe from harm. We placed our trust in you. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen. Let us all sing the Philippine National Anthem. May I call on once again our President, Attorney Francis Lim, for the President's message and report. Attorney Francis.
Thank you, Mark. To our guest speakers and panelists, friends from the government and from the media, special guests, my fellow Phoenix members, good afternoon to one and all. I welcome you all to the 8th General Membership Meeting of Phoenix for the year. I hope that you and your families are coping up well with the pandemic and are all safe and well amidst the onslaught of the Delta variant. Companies should know how to turn raw data into meaningful, actionable insights by leveraging data in this new time and age. Organizations must learn how to properly obtain, analyze, and display data to harness it successfully. Artificial intelligence, or what we commonly call AI, is pushing the limits of machine-assisted capabilities. This cutting-edge technology enables robots to behave autonomously, resulting in the efficient completion of iterative tasks. AI helps create the next generation workplace, which thrives on seamless communication between enterprise system and employees. Human resources are not rendered obsolete. Rather, rising technology augments their efforts. In reality, AI allows businesses to free up resources to focus on higher level projects. Today, we're very fortunate to have experts talk about the result of the IBM survey on the global and Philippine CEO priorities during the pandemic as it relates to agility, technology, and regulation, and how companies should leverage data AI in finance. On behalf of Finex, I would like to thank IBM Philippines for sponsoring today's GMM. And our speakers and panelists, Scott Layton, Madhuri Banda, Shantanu Gupta, Mylene Kasiban, and Eileen Yudan Xiao for taking time out of their busy schedule to be with us today. Also, my sincerest thanks to the ICT Committee, led by Chair Ray Lugtu, Vice Chair and our MC Mark Griseta, and Liaison Director Sandy Garcia, and Programs and Meetings Committee led by Chair Nanette De Jesus, Vice Chair Tony Boy Ansiaco, Liaison Director Edith Xiao for today's very relevant session. My thanks goes as well to our hardworking staff led by Mike Binluan. May I now report on what we did since our last general membership meeting in June. Your institution remains to be at the forefront of national business and economic issues. For the past month, we have issued 5 public statements. First, on July 27, commenting on President Duterte's SONA. Number 2, on July 28, a congratulatory message to Ms. Heidelin Diaz for winning the first ever gold in the Olympics for the country. On July 30, a statement on the 2-week ECQ. On August 11, Phoenix statement on the second quarter GDP growth. And lastly, on August 13, Phoenix statement on the possible extension of ECQ. Phoenix, your organization also co-signed the call for concerted action on air pollution and climate crisis by the Green EDSA movement. Thanks to our member, Eddie Yap, for spearheading this statement. Thank you to the National Affairs Committee, led by Governor Saite Tanco, Vice Chair Risa Mantarin, and Liaison Director Toti Begson for these public statements. On past events, since last July, our committees have been very active, in fact, hyperactive in conducting webinars and online socials and meetings. Our MC, my friend Mark, has earlier announced this, and these are now being flashed on the screen for your further perusal. Thank you to the Arts Committee led by Chair Lia San Juan and Liaison Director Domingo, to the Women in Finance Committee led by Chair Ter Magleo and Liaison Director Titi Solveta, to project leaders, past President Dennis Decena and past President Fred Parungao, Life Member Subcommittee Chair Archit Bartolome, Overall Membership Committee Chair Caloy Cervantes and Liaison Director Titi Solveta, to the Professional Development Committee led by Chair Paul San Pedro, Chair Edith Estacio and Liaison Director Omar Cruz, to the Programs and Meetings Committee led by Chair Nanette De Jesus, Vice Chair Tony Boy Ansiaco and Liaison Director Edith Xiao, and to the Affiliates Committee led by Chair Caloy Cervantes and Liaison Director Domingo for the webinars and the various online activities that they organized for us last month. On future projects, Mark has also announced them, but they're now again being flashed on the board for you to take note. I particularly encourage you or note the August 27 event, which we are spearheading together with the MAP and Makati Business Club on voter registration. I cannot overemphasize why we should go out and encourage our countrymen to register and exercise the right to vote this coming election. On the CFO of the year, the deadline for submission of this year's nominees has been extended to August 31, 2021. In this regard, I would like to thank ING Bank Philippines for continually supporting this annual search. I would also like to send my gratitude to the CFO of the Year Committee, head by Chair Jet Pampolina and Liaison Director Flor Tariela. On the annual Phoenix Conference, as Mark has mentioned, it is scheduled on October 4 to 8 with the theme Disruptive Inclusion, Achieving a Sustainable Future in the New Frontier. This year's conference will still be virtual with a series of webinars to be held throughout the week. The Phoenix Committee, led by co-chairs Brian Edang and Albert Boa, and Liaison Director Mike Borin, continues to invite international speakers, experts, and world leaders to be keynote speakers and panelists. This year's conference will be a truly remarkable one. Another project that the Phoenix Week Committee is setting up is the Forum of Presidential Balls and Vice Presidential Balls in the last week of October. The Manila Times has graciously accepted to be the event's media partner with the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry as co-host. But we are not only doing things on our advocacy, we are also looking internally. In order to strengthen our dearly beloved institution, being one of the more important business organizations of the country, I made it part of my deliverables as your president to have a merit-based performance evaluation for our secretariat. I mentioned this no less than in my inaugural speech. I'm happy to report to the membership that pursuant to this goal and in line with Phoenix 2.01 strategic plan, we have embarked on an organizational development project. This is intended to improve the organizational structure of Phoenix, strengthen the capabilities of our secretariat to make them more efficient with their work, and give due recognition to the high performers among our secretariat officers and staff. I'm sure that this will in turn improve the delivery of value-adding services and activities of Phoenix to you, our members, and our stakeholders. In this regard, your board has approved, and we already started implementing it, an immediate salary increase adjustment to our secretariat effective July 1, 2021, who understandably did not receive merit increases last year due to the pandemic or uncertainties brought about by the pandemic. This structural salary increase will then be followed by a 2021 performance evaluation later this year, which will be our basis for an even higher average salary increase adjustment. For both the structural adjustment and the merit-based increases, your board has approved an average of 25% increase for salaries. But more importantly, we're putting in place a new performance rating system, which will be based on a balanced scorecard to make it more objective and minimize purely subjective assessments in the performance evaluation of staff. We conducted a town hall meeting among our staff to explain this pleasant surprise, and I must tell you that they're truly grateful to the Phoenix family for looking after their welfare amidst these challenging times. I want to especially thank our Vice President for Internal Affairs, Mike Warren, for spearheading this all-important matter. Thanks to past President Jeng Pascual for his invaluable help to Mike and Phoenix on this matter. On membership, may I reiterate our call for everyone to support our membership recruitment drive this year. With the increasing number of life members who will be exempt from payment of annual dues, we have to recruit more new members for our organization's sustainability moving forward. Apart from this, due to the adverse economic effect of the pandemic, some of our members have also resigned. As you may be aware, and as Mark has announced, your board approved an incentive program for all members. Your active involvement in our activities and projects and recruitment of new members will entitle you to discounts for your next year's membership fee. Another significant development is the amendment of our charter, by which we will now be able to accept associate members to our roster. We will soon announce the guidelines for the acceptance of this new category of membership. We hope that the associate members will be the future of our organization. At this point, I would like to express again our sincerest gratitude to the following companies that have made commitments and have actually paid Finex through their sponsorship for 2021. As a partner, Union Bank of the Philippines, Platinum, First Philippine Holdings Corporation, and LT Group of Companies, Diamond sponsor, Ayala Land Inc., Gold sponsors, Converge ICT Solutions, Pilipinas Shell Petroleum Corporation, SG and Company, and United Auctioneers, Patron, Bank of the Philippine Islands, BDO Unibank, and Divina Law, Sirtec Holdings Corporation, and MegaWorld. I would like also to thank KPMG RG Manabat for its contribution and for conducting our annual CF survey, at first in the history of Finex. Please help us get more sponsors for our other events. Within the coming days, all members in good standing will receive the nomination forms for this year's election for our next year's boards. I hope that you will exercise your right to nominate and vote, and nominate those who look after the welfare of our organization. In closing, we will continue to update you on our upcoming events, particularly on the developments of our significant trust for the year. And we look forward to receiving your continuing support. Maraming salamat at mabuhay ang Finex.
Thank you, President Francis. Thank you for that. At this point, may I call on the chairman of the membership committee, Mr. Carlos Real Cervantes, to formally introduce the new Finex members. Carlos?
Good afternoon, everyone. We will now induct the following new members of Finex. May I request the new members to open your camera as I call your name, as well as state your company position, company, and Finex sponsors. The gallery may also please refer to the Zoom slide presentation for the same effect. Next, please. I'm calling on Mary Christine Celis, Vice President, Finance, St. Peter Life Plan, Inc. Sponsor is Mildred Bitancol. Next, please. Calling on Michelle Fisher, APAC Regional Finance Director, Alltech Biotechnology Corporation, sponsored by Michael. Next, please. William Charles Howell, VP Finance Investment Portfolio, CFO and Treasurer of SM Investments Corporation and To Go Group, Inc., sponsored by Michael Ercatomy Guerin. Martha M. Sazon, President and CEO of Globe Fintech Innovations, Inc., Mint GCash, sponsored by Esther Magleo and Sharon Dayoan. Next is Attorney Michael Toledo, Director for Government Relations and Public Affairs, Metro Pacific Investments Corporation, sponsored by Attorney Francisco Ed Lim. Next is Elizabeth Carlos Timbol, Chief Operating Officer and SEVP of Guagua Rural Bank, Inc., sponsored by Elvira Cifra. And to add solemnity to the occasion, may I call our President, Francisco Ed Lim, for their oath of membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaloy. I request the inductees to raise their right hand and follow after me. I state your name.
I,
William Howell,
Michelle
Having
Fisher,
been as a member of the Financial Executive Institute of the Philippines,
having been accepted as a
having
member
been accepted as a member of the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines,
do hereby solemnly swear
Do
Hereby
hereby
solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability
that I will faithfully discharge
faithfully
the best of my
discharge to the best
ability
of my ability
my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives,
my
my
duties
duties and
and
responsibilities
goals
with
and
its goals
objectives,
and objectives,
that I will protect and uphold its constitution and bylaws,
that I will
that I will
protect
protect
and
and
uphold
its
constitutions,
that I will abide by its code of ethics,
that I will abide
will
by
abide by
its
its code of ethics,
that I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards,
that I will observe
the highest
professional,
moral, and ethical standards,
and that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself without
and that I voluntarily impose this obligation
this
upon
obligation upon myself
without mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without mental
mental
reservation
reservation
or purpose of
or
evasion.
purpose of evasion.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you and welcome.
Welcome to Phoenix.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome again to our new Phoenix members. Welcome to Phoenix. Okay. So to start off our session, our main session this afternoon, Ms. Madhuri Banda will present the 2021 CEO study conducted by the IBM Institute for Business Value, entitled Find Your Essential: How to Thrive in a Post-Pandemic Reality. But before that, allow me to introduce Madhuri to everyone. Madhuri is an associate partner in IBM's Enterprise Strategy Practice. She leads IBM Institute for Business Value, IBV, studies for Asia Pacific countries. IBV is the think tank of IBM and publishes thought leadership studies that include futuristic and actionable insights for C-suite executives across industries and technologies. Madhuri has been with IBM for 14 plus years. Prior to IBM, she worked with General Electric and Genpact. Academically, she has a master's degree in business administration. Let's all welcome Ms. Madhuri Banda. Madhuri, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to Phoenix and our IBM Philippines team for giving me this opportunity to present our CEO study insights to this eminent group. So with that, on the IBM Institute for Business Value, thanks, Mark, for giving that introduction. Yes, we are the think tank of IBM, producing futuristic thought leadership. So founded in 2002, the IBM Institute for Business Value, in short, the IBV, collaborates with industry professionals, leading edge clients, academics, as well as wide range of our own IBM consultants and subject matter experts around the world. We use data-driven research and expert analysis to deliver thought-provoking insights to business leaders like you about emerging trends, opportunities, and challenges. So we attempt to provide very actionable and to some extent prescriptive recommendations to address the most pressing industry and marketplace challenges and opportunities that will determine organizational success. So with that, we can go into the CEO study. Next slide, please. Thank you. So about the CEO study. So IBV has been, I will refer the IBM Institute for Business Value in short as IBV going forward. So IBV has the experience of developing C-suite studies since 2003. So that gives us almost 2 decades of experience in trying to understand the insights, trends, challenges about businesses and what is on top of mind of the CXOs. So of all the C-suite studies, the 2021 CEO study is unique as it comes at a very dramatic inflection point that was never seen in recent human history. So as we all understand, never before has this entire planet reconfigured its behavior simultaneously with all the lockdowns, the quarantines, enforced social distancing. So for businesses and governments, the implications have been extreme, with assumptions and plans radically altered. From Asia to Americas, the status quo evaporated both within and across industries. The future is uncertain and, to say so, murkier than ever yet. It presents both new opportunities and risks. So when we embarked on the 2021 CEO study, so we had this entire the pandemic situation on top of our focus. We ran a survey with almost 3,000 CEOs across the globe in November, December 2020. So it is fresh off their minds on how their organizations are re-strategizing, how they are grappling with the pandemic, etc. So we were able to cover almost 26 industries and nearly 50 countries. And we had a good representation from Asia Pacific with 20% of the survey respondent group from Asia Pacific, and happy to share 57 of the CEOs is from Philippines. Next slide, please. Okay, so the study is very elaborate in the sense trying to analyze the responses of 3,000 CEOs across various survey questions, themes based on the pandemic, their strategy on technology, and various other aspects. So in the main study, we tried to analyze the responses over 3 chapters. A chapter 1, which was more on what is on priority of the CEOs, where we understood about being agile, the platforms which support them, and the tech that will help them enable their various strategies. And chapter 2 is a level deeper, where we wanted to understand how a benchmark group we identified as global outperformers among the 3,000 respondents performing versus rest of the others. And a third chapter was more on the essential focus for CEOs. We figured out there were a group of CEOs, organizations that had customer centricity as their core strategy versus some of the others where product strategy was at their core, as well as some of the organizations with operations being at the core of their strategy. Now, for the purpose of this presentation and in the benefit of time, I will be presenting the insights from chapter 2, which is where we are trying to understand how the benchmark group of global outperformers responded to some of the questions. What is on top of the mind? What is it that they are doing differently? And try and compare with here with the Philippines CEO responses. So just to define the benchmarking group, out of the 3,000 respondents, there were 2 questions which we ran, where we tried to understand the revenue growth of the organizations over the last 3 years. So as I said, we ran this survey at the end of 2020. So that would mean 2017, 2018, 2019, plus a very specific question on how the revenue growth is during 2020, so that we wanted to incorporate how the organizations are performing during the pandemic. So based on the outperformance on these 2 factors, we could identify 21.5% of the 3,000 group as global outperformers. And similarly, we have equal percentage who have actually had issues on their performance, and they fall under the global underperformers category. So next slide, please. What we understood when we analyzed the responses of the global outperformer group, we could identify 5 themes that came out more strongly than the others. And they are on their strategy on leadership, technology, employees, their collaborations for innovation and cybersecurity. So on leadership, we could see flatter, faster, and more flexible structures are succeeding. And the top performing organizations also put emphasis on their core proposition, on which are the roles that are crucial for their leadership, etc. On technology, of course, artificial intelligence, along with cloud computing and Internet of Things, were on top of the essential tools list. Organizations that invested in these areas performed better than their peers during the disruptions of 2020. So, from the findings of our survey. On employees, as we all understand, remote work will be a permanent fixture going forward as part of the hybrid workforce that blends, even in future, in-person employees with virtual colleagues. So this will entail shifting organizational culture, the demand for new management approaches, and upgrading the executive capabilities. On open innovation, CEOs anticipate fewer, but yes, more strategically important partnership. So it's about why do everything yourself when you can partner with someone who does it better, and together you would be able to unlock untapped opportunities. Cybersecurity, CEOs of outperforming organizations put a higher strategic importance on protecting against cyber risks and data exposures, and they identify the need that they have to have the technology to enable this. So they recognize that trust has become the currency of business ecosystems, and it is going to become significant, more significant in future. Next slide, please. So in these slides, next slide, please. So in these further slides, what I will try to share is how the benchmark Global Outperformer Group has compared with the Philippine CEOs. What are some of the areas which are on top of the mind for the Global Outperformers versus the Philippine CEOs? So the intent is to be able to showcase on things and best practices that can be taken from the outperformers and try and incorporate in the strategy to the extent possible based on the Philippines CEOs organizational focus. So on the point about who, this is on leadership, on who from the C-suite team will play a crucial role for your organization in the next 2 to 3 years. We could see, yes, both the Global Outperformers and Philippine CEOs have chosen you and your peer group globally as the most crucial for their leadership group. But there are some differences when we go to the next levels. The Global Outperformers identify the CIOs, CTOs as next most crucial versus the Philippines-based CEOs who identify the CEO and the CIO, CTO comes third in the list. Similarly, the Chief Marketing Officer is slightly higher on priority for the Philippines CEOs versus the Global Outperformers. Next slide, please. Okay, so on technology. So when asked about the most crucial technologies that will help the organization in the next 2 to 3 years, as we had predicted, so we had enormous response for artificial intelligence, with 72% of the Global Outperformers choosing artificial intelligence to be a crucial technology for their organization. And Philippine CEOs are not far behind. 65% of Philippine CEOs also identify AI to be a crucial technology. When we compare with the complete group of 3,000, I'm happy to share Philippine CEOs are 25% ahead of the average. So yes, on average, in Philippines, we do understand that AI is important for organizations. Next slide, please. So when we talked about some of the essential elements that would pose the greatest challenge for the organizations in the next 2 to 3 years, So you can see the list, the priority list. For outperformers, technology infrastructure seems to be the greatest challenge, given the emphasis they place on technology to be able to implement their strategy, and how technology plays a crucial role in their entire business structure, followed by regulation and the anywhere workplace. So when we try and see that with the Philippine CEOs, regulation is on top of the list. Not far behind is technology infrastructure. So there is not much difference between how global outperformers identify technology infrastructure versus Philippine CEOs. So it's just the benchmark group is just 17% more than what Philippine CEOs think the importance of technology infrastructure is. And again, both the outperformers and Philippine CEOs do understand Anywhere Workplace is, of course, on top of the top three of their essential elements in the near future. So the others, you can see cyber risk is on fourth. This is again an important notice we have observed, is cyber risk is fourth on the list for global outperformers, while it is the last of the six for Philippine CEOs. Next slide, please. So on the employees, the third point, the third theme, how outperformers are differentiated on employees. So here, both the global outperformers and Philippine CEOs, almost close, do agree that supporting the well-being of employees during the crisis, time of crisis, is more important, even if it costs them profitability and they have to do budget cuts. So, which is good to know, the focus of the CEOs is on the employees. And when we talk about how are they enforcing inclusive practices and behaviors, and how is it central for their leadership agenda, 37% of Philippine CEOs says yes, this is an important criteria and a central criteria for their leadership. Next slide, please. So again, on the employees. So when we asked what exactly are the important organizational attributes that they are employing to engage their employees, especially in remote work culture. So there are certain differences in how global outperformers are engaging their employees versus Philippine CEOs. So as you can see, a continuous learning opportunity and opportunities for career development and organizational stability are on top three for global outperformers, while Philippine CEOs think that having a common mission and a sense of purpose is more important, and that is their crucial strategy to engage their employees. Organizational stability does come on top three, just like outperformers, and continuous learning opportunity also is in the top three. So the other ones which we questioned were work-life balance. So work-life balance is slightly higher in importance for global outperformers compared to Philippines CEOs. Next slide, please. So on the fourth theme of partnerships and open innovation, so when we asked how did the pandemic actually change the importance of certain attributes or functions of business performance, so here we had options of partnerships, about on budgets, about the business structure, about platforms, ecosystems. And what we found is partnerships was on top of the list. Almost 63% of global outperformers and mostly an equal number of Philippine CEOs, you see there 58% of them think that partnerships are important for them, for their business performance, on to be able to collaborate, to innovate together, and to explore the opportunities that come from the pandemic or even otherwise. And to another point about what are some of the things they are going to aggressively pursue in the next few years, we found Philippines, 42% of Philippine CEOs expect to aggressively pursue flexible partner networks close to that of global outperformers. Almost 44% of global outperformers too think pursuing flexible partner networks is advantageous for their organizations. Next slide, please. So the fifth theme of cybersecurity. So when we ask the CEOs, so where in your organizations do you see technology playing the greatest impact? The highest on the list was security and risk. And close on heels was Philippine CEOs' responses. 46% of global outperformers and 37% of Philippine CEOs do see technology to be able to help them manage their security and risk profiles better. On another point about some of the elements they expect to cause greatest challenges, 39% of Philippine CEOs do recognize that this is going to be the greatest challenge. So understandably, they would have focus and strategy in place to be able to protect their organizations about the cybersecurity risks, as this would emerge as the biggest challenge over the next 2 to 3 years. Next slide, please. Yeah, so with these 5 themes on trying to understand how the benchmark group has their focus and what they identify is crucial for their organizations, and how the Philippine CEOs have responded to similar questions, I would like to leave with few questions on the same 5 themes. So the first is on the leadership. So how can we develop a more focused leadership? So here we would be talking about what are the new fundamental requirements for the next generation of leaders? How do customers help drive the leadership decisions? And in what new ways will we lead by example to also engage with the digital native employees? Next, on the technology, some of the questions the CEOs and all the CEOs should be imploring on are: how have we integrated technology and technology leaders into our strategic planning processes? How have we changed our KPIs to reflect the new capabilities and objectives around our technology strategy? What steps are we taking to grow skills and attract top technology talent on the technology? So these are some of the questions we should be imploring. On employee well-being, so how could we do more to support the employee wellness, including focus on mental health? What are some of the actions to ensure our employees are healthy, safe, and financially secure? How do we identify emerging and persistent employee issues? How can we go about growing trust with our employees and establishing a sense of purpose and mission? So on partnerships and collaborations, how can partnerships help us innovate? So how can we use the expanded ecosystem for the benefit of our organizations to positively impact our products, workflows, and experiences? What capabilities can we delegate to, obtain from, or jointly develop with our most trusted partners? And how can technology enhance transparency and flexibility with our partners? On cybersecurity, some of the questions for us to implore is how do we embed cybersecurity as a foundational element in everything we do, which would become more crucial in future? And how do we organize responsibilities so that we can help develop a comprehensive end-to-end cybersecurity, including within our ecosystem, the ecosystem in which we operate? And what do we need to put in place so that every employee feels responsible for cybersecurity? So it is basically about driving an organizational culture where everyone is accountable and responsible, for the organization's security and risk. So how can we use our cybersecurity strengths to enhance customer, partner, and employee trust? So these are some of the questions I would like to leave you with. And next slide, please. So with that, we have come to the end of the CEO Study Insights. And I would request you and strongly recommend to explore our thought leadership across industries, across technologies, and across C-suite roles, including our previous thought leadership on C-suite on www.ibm.com/IBE. And I'm also happy to share that later on in the year, the IBM Institute for Business Value will be is scheduled to publish the studies with similar depth and understanding on the CIO, CTO, which we are planning in November, and the CFO in December this year. So I got some numbers on the CFO, though we are still working on it. So we were able to talk to 2,000 CFOs globally. And again, happy to share 39 from the Philippines organizations. So maybe some of you could have been there, but this is run through a third party, so we would not have a chance of knowing who of you could have been in that group. But early next year, we should be able to give a Philippines point of view on how, similar comparison, there could be different themes, but how the Philippines CFOs see the pandemic affecting their organizations and what is important for them, what is on top of their mind, what their challenges are compared to the rest of their peer group globally, or if we are able to do an outperformer cut then as well. And also, if you are interested to read the more detailed report of the CEO study, which I just presented, as I said, I could present only one chapter here, but there are interesting insights in some of the other chapters also, the first and the third. You would be able to find that on the same homepage of IBV. Also, you should be able to get it on the internet. Just find your essential IBM study, and you should be able to find that. So with that, I come to the end of the presentation, and I think we are open for any questions.
Thank you, Madhuri, for that comprehensive and very relevant presentation, especially for our CEOs and CFOs and other executives here. So at this point, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker for today's webinar, Mr. Scott Layton. Scott leads the Global Finance Transformation practice within IBM. In this role, he works with clients to reimagine and re-engineer their finance process to deliver intelligent workflows and higher value through transformation. He is also the executive sponsor and owner of the IBM Plus Celonis partnership established earlier this year. Scott has been with IBM for nearly 20 years, working across multiple regions, geographies, and functions, spending time in controls, planning, audit, and strategy. Let's all welcome Mr. Scott Layton. Hi, Scott. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate being here. Good morning, everyone. You say good morning, it's afternoon. It's almost 1 a.m. for me, so it is officially morning. So I'm pleased to be with you. I'll try and keep the energy high here. What I want to talk to you about today is artificial intelligence. You heard Madhuri talk about the importance of it and how it contributes to top performing companies. I've always struggled a little bit with artificial intelligence because if you go to the next slide, it's always felt like a flying car to me. So there's always been this promise of the amazing things that are going to happen with artificial intelligence. And it's always been just outside of our grasp, just like the flying car. I really wish I had a flying car these days. We don't. It's almost there, right? We're so close to technology there. It feels real and it's not. And I've always felt artificial intelligence to some extent had that same feeling. So what I want to do today is take you through a couple of examples of AI that's real, that's practical, and that you can use today in your business. Everything I'll talk about today is implemented at businesses, and that's the concept. And if you stay tuned, hopefully you'll pay attention If I'm awake, you should be awake. So hopefully you'll pay attention, because at the end there's a picture of a very small cheeseburger, which I'm really excited to share with you. There's your teaser to stay in it. So go to the next page. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 practical patterns of how AI works. So I'm not an expert in AI. I'm a finance guy, right? So what I'll do is try and put this in real world terms for you and help you understand how this works. But we'll go through 3 patterns. So the first is what we would call causation. And the concept here is you take some kind of set of inputs and you run them through an algorithm to understand how they relate to each other, and then you get some outputs. And we're going to go through some examples of each of these. The second pattern we're going to look at is, you think of it as smart matching, where you've got large sets of data that you need to understand. Can I take one set and match it to the other set of data, and what that looks like? We'll go through some examples of that. Then the last one, this one's maybe most interesting to me because I've got the most hands-on experience, is with natural language. So how do we leverage AI, and maybe more importantly, machine learning, to digest what we call natural language? So think of it as unstructured text. So for example, if someone writes a report for you in English, how do we take the words in that report, the paragraphs, the sentences, and digest them so that we can query them, and we can search them, and things like that? So we're going to go through a couple of examples of those. So that's the plan. And maybe for reference, so as we go into this artificial intelligence, think of this as the, let's say, the algorithm, the engine, the workhorse behind the scenes that's actually helping make these connections and make these decisions or make these suggestions. And for the purpose of this, machine learning is going to be more focused on really training the AI with data. So teaching the AI how to use the data, how to think of it, how to think of what it is. And we'll talk about those examples as we go through this. So that's the plan. Go to the next slide, please. So let's start off with the first one. So this is our causation. And I'll take you through 2 examples here. And again, these are real examples that we have either at IBM today or that we've implemented at clients. So the first one on the left, this is around predictive spend. And what we've done with AI here is we're looking at a bunch of different inputs. So the example I'll take you through here is around contract spend. So one of the problems that we see sometimes is a company may have thousands and thousands of contracts. Each of those contracts has maybe a number of different services provided or contractual obligations, subcontractors, et cetera. And it's very difficult to make sense of all of these contracts together to understand what our company is contractually obligated to pay going forward. So we take all these contracts, we take all the purchase orders that we have coming through, we combine this with some analytics, and we have an AI engine that is able to look at all of these different factors, understand the contracts, understand the spend that's committed in them, understand the amount of money we've already committed towards that spend, understand the patterns around our purchase order spending, and give us a prediction of what we're going to spend over the next time horizon. So usually it's 12 to 18 months. And what we found here is that it can do it with around 1%, well, within 1%, so about 99% accuracy. Real AI. Another example with this causal relationship, and this is almost more of a generic pattern when you think about this, right? So think about these inputs and outputs. So in this case, we worked with a pharmaceutical company, and they wanted to know what would happen if I changed my prices on different drugs that I put in the market. And if I know some information about how my competitors are going to price it, what does that mean? What's going to happen if I do that? So we took all of their history, their financial history, their market history, their manufacturing data, their client orders, their contracts, their pricing data, and we put it into this giant AI engine. And what happens when you have all these inputs, you have a series of variables and you have outputs that variable combination drove. And the AI engine is much better at humans than at understanding patterns. So it looks at all of these different inputs and it understands which ones are related, which ones are directly correlated, indirectly correlated, which ones have nothing to do with each other. And based on that, it builds this model. And what you get out of this is you get a scenario modeler where you have all of your inputs and you can tweak all of your inputs. You can change all of your inputs, and they will tell you what your expected outcome will be. So in this case, what the pharmaceutical company did is they changed their prices. They went to optimize their prices based on what they thought their competitor was going to do, so that they could optimize their profit over a time horizon on the specific drug they were going to release to market. Not exactly easy to build, but very easy to use. So that's causation. So again, think about inputs, outputs. We have a history. AI helps us understand the history, and we work to understand the outcome and how we can change that outcome based on different inputs. If you go to the next slide, please. So another example, another pattern. So here, this is around reconciliation. So we've got large sets of data, or we've got large collections of data, and we're trying to understand how they relate to each other. Again, real examples. So three-way invoice matching. Some of you may have heard this. It's very common in business to do this three-way matching. So you're making sure that the items that you ordered on the purchase order are matching the items that you're being invoiced for, that you're being asked to pay for, are matching the goods that you actually received. That's the three-way. This sounds straightforward maybe, but as probably most of you know, this gets very difficult when you start getting partial invoices. So you ordered 100 things, you got an invoice for 50 of them because it's a partial shipment, and then by the way, you only received 25 of them. This starts getting very complex when you have thousands and thousands and thousands of orders and a very busy inventory system. And what you want to make sure is when you're making your payments to your vendors for the supplies that they're giving you, you're paying the right amount. You want to make sure you're paying for what you ordered. You want to make sure you're paying for what you received. So what we do is we have an artificial intelligence engine here that sits at the middle of this and looks at these three sources of documents and understands from these three sources of documents, looks at all the different data on them. And you can do this. Sometimes they're electronic documents, sometimes you scan them in. We have intelligent character recognition. So think of that as like you scan in an invoice and it knows it's an invoice, and it knows where the date is, it knows who the supplier is, it can pull out all the purchase order line items, etc. It uses a fuzzy logic based on artificial intelligence and threshold detection and machine learning that allows it to match these things all together. And so it can see and it keep track of it as well. So when you've issued a purchase order for 100 items, it sees that 50 of them have been invoiced, but only 25 have been received. Therefore, you should only pay for 25. And by the way, we should probably notify the vendor that they've shorted us on 25, because we've been invoiced and having it received them. It keeps track of all of that. So you get this ability to have a very high level of confidence that you're paying out only the amount of money that you're owing to suppliers and the amount of goods that you've received. Previously, this would be done in a very manual fashion. You'd have an analyst trying to pour through all these different sets of data, very, very inefficient and very inaccurate, frankly. We get very, very high levels of accuracy here. Another example of a reconciliation system. And again, it's this pattern. In this case, think of it as you have, maybe you have different bank recs coming in, or you're trying to reconcile an account that has inputs and outputs. And the whole goal at the end of it is to balance that account or to zero it out. But what happens a lot of times with accounting journals, etc., you're getting amounts that are coming in, and there's timing issues. Maybe there's interest, maybe there's currency conversions, maybe there's currency loss. You're getting all these different things, and make it so it's not, $1 equals $1. You've got $1, and then you've got 46 cents and 51 cents. So it's never going to exactly equal. Same concept here. So you train this artificial intelligence using machine learning to understand what transactions should match. And you build that in around timing constraints. You build it in around details around transactions and what kind of account numbers they should be coming from. And again, you teach it, telling the machine learning algorithm, this is what success looks like. These accounts match. These accounts match. So you show it, you train it with different sets of data saying, these should all be matches. And what it does is it learns. And that's the beauty of machine learning, is that you're not creating rules. You're just helping the AI, you're helping the AI understand what a match should look like. And then it starts making matches on its own and submitting them to the reviewer to see, is this a match, yes or no? And you train it. Every time you tell it yes or no based on what assumptions it's making, you're training it, and it's getting better and better and better. We use this quite a bit with account reconciliations within accounting. Next page. So we've been through two patterns. This is my favorite. This is my absolute favorite because I have a lot of experience in this. Think of this as teaching a computer, an AI, to read and to understand things. And we have two great use cases here. Again, I'm a finance guy, finance background, so you'll see a lot of these have finance in them. But what happens here is, let's say you have in this case, a contract, the first example on the left here. Let's say you have a contract, and inside that contract, you got a lot of different terms and conditions. Well, is a lot of you probably know, the terms and conditions directly relate to the accounting treatment. So it's important for an accountant to understand or to read the whole contract to know, all right, should this contract have, current period revenue? Should I amortize this over a period of months? Are there milestone payments that, that get met before I can recognize revenue? What does that look like? Well, that's hard to do, especially if you have a high volume of contracts. Accountants probably don't like reading contracts that much. What you can do is you can train an AI to read the contract and look for specific flags of data. And it's not, you don't train it with rules. You don't say, every time you see milestone, flag this as relevant. What you do is you teach it how to read. So you say, this is a contract, this is a clause, this is a payment, this is a dollar amount. And it's called annotating. As you annotate the data, the contract, and when you do that for 20, 30, 40, 50 contracts, it will start being able to annotate the next contract for you and say, I recognize this as a clause. I recognize this as a section that could have an impact on revenue recognition. I recognize this as a section that could have a risk to the contract overall. You teach it to read the contract, and the outcome of this is you're able to process contracts through this AI engine, and it will highlight out the relevant passages that it thinks are important for an accountant to read with a very high probability of relevance. And even further, because you have the machine learning component, it can suggest this should be an accrual contract. This contract should be booked over 3 months. This contract should only be booked when milestone payments happen. And by the way, here's the payment schedule based on what we've read in the contract. That's the AI saying that. That's amazing to me. That's incredible. Again, this is real. This is absolutely real. This is not pie in the sky. Another example, and this is the one that's close to my heart. This is the one I built myself. So my previous job before I came over to lead our consulting practice, I was the internal audit director at IBM for Asia Pacific. I was based out of Singapore, and we used hundreds and hundreds of reports every year. And what we realized is that we didn't have, we constantly had new auditors. We had a rotational program coming in. We realized we needed to do something different because our auditors couldn't always read these hundreds of reports. So we created an annotator. Again, think of it as taking this, teaching an AI to read an internal audit report and make sense of it, understand the findings, understand the cause of the findings, understand the severity, and understand the output, the recommendation. And we taught it to read these internal audit reports. And we took this unstructured data, the report, and made it structured. And then we built some additional kind of machine learning in there that said you could interact with the reports in natural language. So for example, I could type into this interface, show me significant findings from the Philippines in 2019 involving suppliers. And it understood that question. And it understood how to pull that out of every single audit report. It knew where to find whether the report was in the Philippines or not, knew how to look for suppliers. It knew what significant meant because we taught it tone and understanding that, never is much worse than sometimes. And once you have this structured set of data, imagine the analytics we were able to do on it. We were able to start looking at the ratings that we had for these audits to see whether it was consistent with the writing that we had. We were able to have our auditors, when they would go to start a supply chain audit, for example, they could pull all of the most significant findings related to supply chain for the audit scope they were doing. And one other interesting thing was, because we taught the AI how to write an audit report writing is very technical in nature. Because we taught it how to write that report, it could then give feedback to new auditors that came in that were learning how to write. They can actually paste in their opinion or their findings, and it will tell them the tone of it. It will tell them how it compares to other audit opinions that have been written, and it will give them related audit opinions that seem consistent with the same tone to give them some ideas on where they could go with it. So really, again, these are just three patterns. These are three of my favorites. I think they're interesting mainly because they're real. So next slide. Let me give you a couple more minutes on AI and how you should think about it going forward. So first, it's real, but it's a tool. You should not confuse it with a hammer looking for a nail. Not every problem is going to be solved by AI, even if it feels like it can. You've got to understand where it's appropriate, where it's applicable, and where it's a proven technology. Also keep in mind moving forward, you think about that example where you have these inputs generating these outputs. We already today have algorithms that are so complex that humans can't make sense of them. They can't understand the relationships between all of these different inputs that creates the output. What happens when that happens? You end up with this black box where we have some kind of rational, logical decision-making engine that's suggesting us to take action, but we don't know why, and we can't understand why. So as you think about AI in your business, as you think about this going forward in the future, just remember, the further you move from being involved in decision-making and having an AI do it, the more complex it is and the more different kind of skills you're going to need to understand it. Imagine auditors having instead of being able to audit your financial statements, they've got to audit your AI algorithm to make sure it's suggesting the right things and making the right three-way matches or the right reconciliation, because you become dependent on technology. So just a little thought, and not to go too far in the future, because this is all about meant to be practical, but I think it's important. Next slide. So we talked a lot about what AI can do. There's still a lot of things that AI can't do. It'll never replace the people on this call, almost guaranteed. You're still going to have human judgment for many years to come. Again, we're still waiting for flying cars, right? It's not going to make complicated decisions. You're always going to have a human element in it. There's a whole other thing around accountability, which we briefly touched about in this black box idea, but in your everyday life, think of that. For example, if you know Teslas, right? Tesla is making decisions every second, every microsecond that it's on the road and it's driving. And if it makes a mistake, who's held accountable? Same thing in business. If your AI reconciles something or suggests you to take a specific action that ends up being wrong, who's accountable? How does that look? So keep that in mind. There's a lot more questions that are going to be created with AI. You can't leave it on its own. It's never going to replace accounting or finance. It'll automate a lot of things. It'll help you become a better finance person or a better, fiduciary officer of a company, but a lot of things it can't do yet. And lastly, I told you I'd show you, go next slide. I told you I'd show you a picture of a very small hamburger. Let me do it in context. If I were to give you advice about how you should think about AI, it's on this page. It's related to food. First, don't try to be a chef. That's my favorite Filipino dish. I don't know how to bistec. I think it's how you say it. It's the most delicious Filipino food I've ever had. Super simple, beef and onions. I can't cook it. I absolutely can't cook it. I also can't program AI. So when you think about needing to build an AI, you need to have a great chef. So I encourage you, as you pursue this path, don't try and do it yourselves, just like you wouldn't try and go start a restaurant. Your finance people, your executives, bring in the experts to do it. Second, it's important to take bite-sized pieces of transformation as you go. Prove the value out. Take something that seems straightforward, demonstrate value with a minimal investment. That's the beauty of AI and the way that this exponential technology works. It's very easy to take small projects. The ideas of multi-million-dollar transformations are over. I have real examples. That audit program I told you about with the AI, that whole thing that we built cost 20 or 30K. That was it, $20,000 or $30,000. So take bite-sized projects, prove the value, and then use the value that you create from that project to self-fund. and to fund your transformation going forward. And then lastly, order the right items, meaning when you choose, be very selective about how you want to invest, what the outcome you want to get out of it, and where you want to go with it. Because if you try and take on too much and you set your hopes too high for artificial intelligence, what it's going to do for your business, you're still going to be waiting for that flying car 10 years from now, and you're going to have spent a bunch of money and it's not going to be worth it. So bring in the experts, start small, scale quick, and make sure you take on the right projects. So I really appreciate all your time today. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Mark, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Okay. So at this point, all right, I think we'll have some Q&A, correct, Manette? Okay, so but if there's no time, Scott and Ms. Banda, you can please feel free to respond to the Q&A portion of, to the Q&A box in this Zoom platform. Again, thank you, Scott, for making everyone appreciate and understand the usability of AI in business and the importance of AI, and also for assuring everyone here that a robot won't replace all of us here, or not yet, or not yet in the near future. So again, before we go to the next segment of our program, IBM has prepared something for us. Let's watch this.
Today, businesses are anticipating and accelerating, reimagining and reinventing, engaging and equipping. You need technology that helps you work not just productively, but predictively. Hybrid cloud and AI with IBM help you do just that, making your business more resilient, bringing AI to your data everywhere it lives, helping you make decisions you can trust, and speeding your digital transformation. Is your business ready? Together, we predict. Together, we think.
Okay, thank you. So to help your digital transformation journey, IBM is also sharing with us today the AI Ladder ebook. This is a prescriptive approach to help us, you, and your company accelerate your AI journey no matter where you are in the process. IBM hopes that this will help you gain a deeper understanding of the power of AI and how to unleash its potential. In addition, just let us know if you'd like to have a one-on-one session with an IBM executive, a Client Innovation Center virtual tour, or a session for your company on the data fabric and AI journey. You can scan the QR code on your screens right now, or apply, or of course, copy the link on your screens as well. Now, at this point, I will turn you over to seasoned broadcast media professional, Mr. David Celdran, for the next part of our program. David?
Yeah, hi, Mark. Can you hear me? Audio and video clear?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you so much for that transition, Mark. And yeah, this is a really interesting part of our program. So hello, everyone. My name is David Celdran from ANC, and welcome to Leveraging Data and AI in Business, which is a panel discussion presented by the ABS-CBN News Channel in partnership with IBM and, of course, Phoenix. Now, in the next 30 minutes, we'll react to what our speakers presented earlier and maybe add in a few more insights on how businesses can survive and indeed thrive in the new normal. Like, for example, what role does information technology have, and AI in particular? What role will it have in businesses? And how will the workplace of the future look like in the near future or perhaps down the road? You know, nowadays, the future is measured in just a few months and no longer in a matter of years. So for our discussion today, we are joined by Eileen Hudan-Hiao, President and Country General Manager of IBM Philippines. She'll be joining us later. We also have today Shantanu Gupta, Partner in Finance Transformation of IBM Asia Pacific. Thanks as well for being here. And rounding out our panel is a colleague of yours, Mylene Casiban, the CFO of Robinsons Retail Holdings Incorporated. Now, just a quick note before we start, if you want to join our discussion, you can do so by typing your questions in the Q&A box that you'll find in the bottom of your Zoom screens, okay? Just remember to keep those questions short, concise, and address those questions to a specific panelist, if possible, of course. I'm sure you're all used to doing this on Zoom by now, as I'm sure we'll all learn to adjust to the swirl of so many changes happening around us. Indeed, our collective experience from the pandemic has forced our businesses and organizations to pivot and evolve and, yes, reevaluate what's truly essential. So much so that despite the challenges imposed by the lockdowns and the border shutdowns, we've all found ways to connect and innovate, leading us to breakthroughs in technology relating to how we do our businesses. Well, at least that's what outperforming companies across the globe are doing and achieving. And speaking of which, IBM's Vice President for Global Finance Transformation Practice Leader, we had Scott Layton earlier, discussing with us how their company is continuously transforming its global business centers towards an intelligent engine of growth and reinvention by utilizing, among other things, AI-supported data, and also by crafting personalized learning experiences for their employees. Meanwhile, another speaker, Madhuri Banda from IBM's Institute for Business Value, shares her findings from their 2021 CEO study that enhanced operational agility and flexibility will be the top priorities for Philippine CEOs in the next 2 or 3 years at least, while IoT, or the Internet of Things, cloud-based computing, and AI, there you go again, AI, are expected to contribute heavily in delivering positive results for business. But what exactly do these innovations and survey insights mean to you personally as CFOs, or to your businesses, or to your teams? Well, let's ask our panel, starting with an all-important question about surviving in the new normal. Though I think the better word to use these days is thriving rather than just surviving. So let me start off with Eileen. Eileen, hello, by the way. Now, the Global CEO study, which was mentioned earlier, outlined the strategic priorities and the key areas which the more outperforming CEO respondents in the Philippines say they will focus on in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, are the findings consistent with what you're hearing on the ground? You know, you've been interacting with CFOs, CEOs, business leaders. Are they consistent? And if ever, what is their essential? To use the terms that you use here in IBM, what is their essential, Eileen?
Good afternoon. Thank you, David. Good afternoon, Phoenix, and thank you for this opportunity. So let me just go back to what Madhuri had shared earlier. No? So the Philippine CEO said the top 3 factors for them, number 1 was regulatory. Regulatory factors, those were the challenges. The second one is technology factors. And to be very specific in the study, that was around cloud, AI, and IoT. The third one was really around cybersecurity. Sorry, that's the last one, the sixth one for us, right? That is the change, I would say, right? From what I see, of the 57 CEOs, I'm happy to share with you, half of them were actually in the global outperformers. I checked the details, so which is good for us. But really, the cybersecurity, from what I see among the others, it's beginning to be a real increasing concern. I wouldn't say if we do the study right now, I think the cybersecurity will go a little bit higher than up to the third, okay, in terms of the priority. And the other one, which is new that I find recent interest is around environmental sustainability because of the consciousness at the board level for ESG. But generally, yes, pretty much the same, right? Regulatory, we're conscious about IETF and the government controls pandemic. And again, now us shifting from pandemic to endemic planning.
Interesting to see our own CEOs and business leaders looking at environmental sustainability as an important factor. That wasn't quite captured in the rest of the global survey, but nice to see that it's here in the Philippines. Of course, as you said, amazing that the Philippine CEOs are consistent with global outperformers all across the globe. Okay, let me go to Shantanu. Hi, Shantanu. Thanks for joining us from a different time zone. Scott Layton, your colleague here, mentioned in his presentation that the metrics have changed, and indeed they have. Now, can you elaborate further using your own insights from the Asia Pacific region in the Philippines in particular. And what are the most important metrics that companies need to pay attention to right now and in the immediate future? Shintan.
So David, thank you, and Phoenix, good afternoon, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you. Scott and I go a long time back working in finance, and while he was in Asia Pacific as well. The whole way CFOs now have been thinking over the last 1.5 years, that's undergone a significant shift from those traditional CFO to new expectations from a CFO, which are more around being a business partner, driving decisions, and being a digital change agent. Now, a few things as organizations have tried to come out of the pandemic has been focus on client and focus on improving operational and business resilience, which also includes profitability. If I were to segment some of these thoughts into probably 4 categories, which are important and which probably link back to what Scott said and what Eileen said as well, is drive business growth and drive business revenue. And again, as some of the points that probably Scott mentioned on revenue forecasting, on understanding and optimizing portfolio, some of those AI tools enable you to do that. Second is business optimization and cost optimization, reducing leakage, which is again, going through your account reconciliations, going through various other methods on invoice validations. How can you do processes simpler, faster, easier, leveraging data and AI machine learning to get better while freeing up resources to do more value-added work and decision-making support system. Third, over the last 1.5 years, I've seen cash has become very important. So AI tools, say for example, what I can think of Working Capital Optimizer as a very simple basic tool, which allows you to look at historical data, the causation and effect that Scott spoke about, is to look at all your vendor data, look at all your client data, and especially in pandemic, what are the industries they're operating in, if you are in a service industry like us, or in a CPG industry, how you can correlate all of that data to improve your working capital and hence create opportunities for investment. And the fourth obviously is controls and compliance, which again, for example, audit was one of the example that Scott gave. So, when you look at all these 4 metrics that are really important to the CFO these days, AI, data, machine learning, natural language processing, all of these help enable get things faster. And I leave with one thought is agility and speed has become really important in the last 1 year. And all of these tools help you to do that, David.
And part of the changing metrics, not just on a yearly or monthly level, but even weekly, is employment, and people satisfaction, well-being. That's also important, right? The technology on one side, but the human capital on the other.
Absolutely, you bang on customer, employees, and your vendors. Every one part of the ecosystem has to be satisfied. And what technology and the processes enable us to do that is exactly make them really happy. For example, when we start doing, if I'm sitting down 5 hours just doing manual reconciliation and thinking how to get a report out, means I'll be so much happier if I don't have to do it as a financial analyst. So the employee satisfaction after organizations have deployed some of these tools have enabled them to get down to more value-added work, which is really satisfying. From the customer perspective, the speed to response has improved significantly. And the consistency of response has improved significantly as well, which improves client set and stickiness of clients as well.
All right, we'll talk more about technology in a while. But let me go to Mylene. Hello, Mylene. Good afternoon. Now, retail, which is the industry you belong to, is an industry that's among the most, I would say, radically disrupted during this pandemic, right? And most say that these changes, as radical as they are here to stay. Can you share with us your own experience about how you helped the Robinsons Retail Group pivot and adjust to the many shifts such as, for example, online shopping and electronic payments, which is really an explosion of activity in that area, Mylene.
Yeah, thanks, David, and good afternoon to the officers of Phoenix and members, rest of the members. Yeah, that's right, David. We were the most, affected last year. When the lockdown started last March 2020, what we did was immediately, pivoted towards online. In just 3 months, in June 2020, we launched our own e-commerce platform. So we first rolled it out, in supermarket, and then, it across all other formats as well. It's actually good that we have our own digital strategy in place, although that keeps evolving, and that also includes, for example, in finance, how do you automate and convert into electronic forms a lot of documents so that you can enable working from home. On the other hand, I think it's very, very important that we enable the stores. Some of our stores are closed. So how do we sell more? As a result of our digital strategy and our own e-commerce, we grew, a couple of folds, our e-commerce in our e-commerce space.
Right, interesting. And we'll talk about partnerships later on, because obviously you didn't have to do this alone. You needed the help of partners, especially technology partners. But let's go precisely to that next topic, which is technology. Clearly, technology hasn't just helped businesses survive and adapt to the times. It's also opened up so many new possibilities, many of which most business leaders are only now starting to realize and appreciate. So let's ask our panelists about the role of tech. So Shantanu, no doubt, technology is helping businesses become more agile. It's become an essential asset of their operations. So true enough, if we go back to that survey mentioned earlier, Philippine CEOs have highlighted these core technologies, IoT, cloud technology, and AI, which is one of your specialties, as their priorities in the next 2 to 3 years. So let's focus on AI. All right. What do you think, or rather, how do you think AI emerged as one of the most important core technologies to focus on, not just currently, but in the near future? I mean, AI has just really gone on top of that list. Why do you think so? And if I could follow it up with, which areas of their businesses or their operations should they apply data and AI solutions to maximize performance, to maximize benefits? Because you can't quite do it all throughout your company. As Scott said, it's got to be a piece at a time, right?
Yeah, and David, thanks for that question. I'll refer back to what was the IBB survey, which said 65% of the CEOs or CFOs, they want to use AI to improve their operational performance as well as outreach of their customers. Now, why AI has really taken grasp over the last 1 year is just because the manual repetitive works, and in a disruptive environment, you have to act with speed, which means you have to do away with work that can be done by something else, which probably in this case is computers and codes and machine learning, and which is essentially the AI that Scott spoke about, to more decision making and speed of decision making. Means, for example, what Mylene mentioned about closing of the stores and the inventory therein, how you are able to reorient and drive your inventory, your orders, your payments, your suppliers, all of that together, because it's a whole business machinery that is running. And unless you keep on doing that on Excel spreadsheets, it becomes a bit more challenging. And that's where AI has really helped connects the dot in terms of data and historical data, processing that data to say what is the best and efficient use of capital and a way to reach customers, keep your continuity in terms of business resilience on revenue, etc. Now, as organizations really think about going to AI, some of those organizations had already started probably 2 years back, 3 years back. They had started on a journey. Some just started last year. So what I suggest and what I think of is it's a whole range of spectrum of activities which range from low complexity to high complexity and varying degrees of timeline and maturity within which these can be implemented. For example, if you talk about low complexity business processes, and that would fall between the main business towers of finance on R2R, procure to pay, payment, POs that one of the gentlemen spoke about. invoice matching, how can you automate some of those things? Working capital optimization that I spoke about earlier. How do you optimize spend? Where you can shift spend and improve your margins, payroll, even things like master data management, etc. Means those are really low value. You could typically take 2 to 3 months to implement it, and you would be in a position to generate almost both either improvement in business metrics or cost efficiency that would come about. Now, if you go to medium processes, that would be things like journal approvals that you're talking about, automated journal approvals, which would use OCR technology, or that would include some rules, etc., which would be put into the AI from historical data to be able to say that you process it, or something like travel and expense audit. Normally how much of time you spend in lodging your claims and approving your claims. Assume if it was being done by a machine and only exceptions would come through. There are duplicate claims that are raised, that are delays in processing of payments that happen. There is, you would say, frauds that happen. So how do you detect those frauds? How do you ensure that you are not auditing? So you could deploy that. That typically would save around 2.5% of total expense. Again, takes a bit more time to implement, 4 to 6 months. You could implement. Now, when you go to more complex, AI tools, which is talking about financial forecasting, budgeting and planning, which is talking about deploying enterprise performance management, which is talking about deploying a cognitive pricing that Scott spoke about. And cognitive pricing typically would generate, improve revenues to the extent of 1 to 5%, or improve margins to the extent of 2 to 10%, just to give a perspective of how these have enabled during the pandemic here. Those typically can be deployed anywhere greater than 6 months. Now, I think the important thing is that every organization is on a journey. It depends upon where are they in their journey, and hence you start with low complexity processes and gradually take on to the high complexity processes, David. I think you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to continue with that journey based on the pain points that you typically have.
That's right. As they say, every journey starts with a single step, and you provide a whole, menu of options from simple to complex. This is quite complicated. It's taking me some time to process the information. I think I need some AI myself here beside me. But let's go to Mylene. And speaking about AI, the retail industry, of course, has benefited from this. So Mylene, how important are these core technologies which we mentioned? Mostly AI especially, although let's include cloud technology or cloud computing, Internet of Things. How important are these core technologies in your current supply chain and your ability to support the data explosion in e-commerce transactions? Because every day we're getting more data into the system, and including the data that is processed between you and your ecosystem of partners, Mylene.
Yeah, that's right, David. I agree with Shantanu. AI and the rest of the other technologies are very, very important in retail. Retail is detail. We deal with a lot of volume day to day in our point of sale systems. So it's critical both for offline and online. At this point, our systems are in sync, especially for e-commerce, because we are also using our offline technologies for offline for our online stores. But then again, our retail needs a lot of information, data, and there's a lot of technical debt. When I say technical debt, it's about how do you upgrade technologies faster than what's happening in the market, so that you can cope up with e-commerce from demand from the customers. And as Shantanu mentioned as well, for us, data is the new gold, because we want to know real time what customers are buying. They can be buying something different online versus offline. So what promotions work well, and also data insights. Our loyalty card, is very important because it gives a lot of insights on customer preferences, and it helps us, do our predictive analytics or predictive marketing. So how do you, impute AI here? How do you get it faster, both from the front end and the back end?
Oh, speaking of which, I have that loyalty card, by the way. I'm glad to know you're making good use of my information. Eileen, let me bring you in here because it's good to see that Robinsons Retail has started their journey, and they're quite a distance in that journey already. But not everyone has kept up the same pace. So, what is your advice to companies looking to leverage data and artificial intelligence in particular in finance or just in their business operations in general? I mean, how, when, and where should they begin? I know there's a lot of questions to ask, but again, how, when, and where should they begin their journey?
Actually,
Eileen.
the first sentence I would say is really start with your problem. What is the problem you wish to solve, right? So let's be clear about this. AI is not a magic wand. It's not, we wish it was levitating for you, but it can be sexy. It can be real magic once you see the power of it, and it's democratized across the entire organization. But you want to apply AI in areas where you have tried many times, for example, but you have completely failed. There's such data explosion that no matter what amount of people, highly skilled people you have put into it, you will still need the help of machine learning, and trying to mix structured and unstructured data to get the most out of it, right? So you really want to choose a problem that you want to start with. And it will be aided by AI, right? So don't worry about it. You can get the tips in the book. So that's the first one, right? The second one is you cannot do, and again, you will get expanded the concept of this. You cannot do the AI without understanding your IA. No AI without IA. Very simple. What is IA? Information architecture. That's why it's a ladder, right?
Okay.
How is data? What kind of data do you even have? Never mind whether they're clean or not clean, but what kind? Are they on-premise? Are they off-premise in some system somewhere else? Are they on paper? Are they in your head? All of these things. You almost want to document that just to organize and so on. Because once you do that, you will start to build an architecture, like building a house, right? I think I want to do this house. Is it 1 floor, 2 floors? It's the same concept. Let's have an architecture where the stairs will be because the rooms will be featured this way, right? So have that information architecture in there. And then finally, I would say from a technical stack standpoint, right? When you look at your infrastructure, AI, we're lucky now that it is AI by design. Meaning to say when you get, AI will be good, right? It will process a lot of data, but once you get so hooked to AI models, it can consume a lot of compute power. So your computers need to be designed such that they know how to use it. It's not just because they have high memory. It's a very different skill for a computer, like GPUs and so on. I won't go to the technical, but it's got to know how to process that by design. So the people you have in your organization, these are things that you'd like them to look into. But going back to the original question, David, start with the problem that you wish to solve, that you've been having a problem, trying to do it with such a number of experts, and somehow you still want to see the art of the possible. Sorry, I will also say, AI, do not look at AI for the past. Okay, so that one you can slice and dice with some analytics. Look at AI showing you what you can do with data that was in the past, what is current, real time, but it's also the art of the possible. I think that's the perspective we should consider.
I like that term, the art, because it doesn't entail purely machine generated knowledge. There's a lot of human knowledge required here as well. It's really a tandem of human knowledge and computer knowledge that has to come together. And someone's got to do it for you. And that step has to start immediately. Okay, let's go to a third topic, our final theme actually for this panel. And I'm personally interested because I'm affected by this. It's a whole work from home or hybrid working thing. Okay, this theme I'd like to pursue now is what the future of work and the workplace will look like. And surely the pandemic has accelerated changes that were already taking place, by the way, but which ones do you think will be the most crucial for companies going forward? So let's get back to our panel for their insights and maybe even their predictions. Mylene, okay, I'm pretty sure this has affected Robinsons just as much as it's affected every other company in the Philippines. The anywhere workforce, we hear that everywhere these days, right? Yeah, the anywhere workplace, including the anywhere work, because you can really work anywhere. We hear it all over the place, and including from our own speakers earlier. So that's what the future apparently will be, a hybrid workplace. That's what they're calling it, a hybrid workplace. First of all, Maylene, do you agree with this? Is it just a passing thing because of the pandemic? And if you agree with it, how do companies like yours best adopt a hybrid work setup and environment, for the benefit of your employees, for your operations, and of course for the bottom line? Can you share with us the innovations in your own company, Maylene?
Yeah, we have. I don't think that there's I think there's no turning back on this hybrid workplace. It just really depends on how far you're gonna go for it. But as Eileen mentioned, it's very, very important to simplify and automate across the organization, so you can enable a work from home, for example, on certain days. Technologies and iterative process, even looking at AI, robots or bots, in your processes is very important. But then again, that said, retail needs a lot of face-to-face interaction. So I think it's going to be a combination of both. For example, our merchandising department, our buyers need to touch and see and feel, snoozes, shoes, clothes, or even our pharmacists need to ensure that they dispense the right medicines, right? But it's good that, we continue to upgrade our front end and back end systems so that we can leverage, on a work from home, our technologies for the work from home, setup as well. But it can be challenging, especially for retail.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's called hybrid, right? In the case of retail, it's got a bit of brick and mortar and a bit of a virtual. It's not one or the other. And it's interesting. I want to ask Shantanu, from the technology perspective, with all these changes in the workplace happening, what role will AI play in the future of work and employee productivity? You already mentioned some of these. And if you could suggest how Philippine businesses can leverage AI to successfully transition to the new realities of work and of the way you manage employees, Shantanu?
So David, in fact, when the pandemic hit us, I was the CFO for Asia Pacific for our global business services. And before that, I had never imagined a situation where finance teams not going to be sitting together and working. And pandemic changed all of that thinking and took that away. Means the way I see it is hybrid working environment is here to stay. And what some of these technology and tools have done is have allowed us to move repetitive manual work and have made us and our team smarter in focusing towards value on whatever we do, do a value-added work and provide value to the business in terms of ensuring that you are taking decisions based on, predictive analytics and usage of historical and external data rather than just, reporting. How AI has really helped us, some of those repetitive work like, reconciliations that I spoke about, or manual reporting that is happening, or even rule-based validations. A lot of that manual work has gotten now on AI. And again, which was, if you relate it back to the low complexity work, that has enabled operational efficiency. I would still divide it into two parts. One is client-based activities, and second is operational efficiencies. And all AI-related activities have to be prioritized into these two buckets. Now, as it comes to Philippines, I would say, IBM Philippines has been using it. We had, as in finance, undergone a huge transformation over the last couple of years, which now IBM Philippines does. The most important thing is skill, which Scott spoke about. That skill is available locally within Philippines market. We itself and IBM, we've got a center supporting clients globally, around 8,000 odd resources, which means that, you don't have to look outside of Philippines to be able to say, do I start on the AI journey? Second is, there are a lot of used cases which get created on things like, spend analysis, working capital optimization, dispute management, some of the basic things which are fundamental to finance operations. There are 40 plus use cases which are out there, which can easily be replicated across organizations as well. And which is where I would really say that the strength really lies in terms of Philippines having capability. It's a question of where you want to start that journey and how you want to traverse that journey in terms of prioritization of your business requirements, David.
Very quickly, Shantanu, just a follow-up question. I suppose a byproduct of all these talk about AI, technology, and partnerships, or outsourcing of competencies to those who might do a better job at it, has created some level of job insecurity. And just quickly, I mean, the notion that jobs will be lost because of all these innovations, what do you have to say about that? Because there's retraining involved, and there are other roles for workers or employees to have as well, right?
So a very valid question, and I think where things are moving is that we have got to reskill out our teams and get them to learn new things like data science, like statistics. New ways of working have to be learned. What is agile ways of working? Essentially, it's a question of saying that rather than doing manual work, which is repetitive, and taking 5 hours to generate a report, can you spend time on analysis of the report and become a partner to the business in enabling business decisions? I think that's a learning and a skill development that we all as finance professionals have to do, because that's really key to removing insecurity. Where does insecurity come about? What am I doing right now? If I take that away, what am I going to do? We've got to show them what is the art of possible in terms of what they can do, which means as soon as you do that and enable a framework of learning within the organization, that shift and insecurity automatically goes away. And we've seen that in organizations where we have transformed. We've seen this within our organization as well as we did transformation data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got to show the art of the possible. I got that, and I think that's a really important concept that we've learned here. The possibilities rather than the negative things that we associate with change. And Eileen, this is important because if AI is now really possible across industries, and it is, then we must leverage AI and technology as we deal with the explosion in available data. But how do we prepare ourselves? I mean, as CFOs, as business leaders, for the skills needed in this new area. I mean, I think it was Scott, or it was the first presentation where I saw that line where it's time to stop talking about technology and start doing it. Agree. So what is IBM doing in this space to make things happen? And if ever, Phoenix being the largest network of financial executives in the country, what kind of role would Phoenix have as well in this, if ever? Eileen.
Yeah, so that's a number of ideas there. What I do is to structure my response to that. Let me go from the top down. Okay, as senior leaders, and did you wonder why the CFOs? It was really the answer there. The CFOs are really the same as the global outperformers. What's the number one crucial role, right? If you look at it, the senior leaders, in my view, if you are going to leverage AI, right, we need to have a mindset that this is going to be almost a culture reinvention for all of us. It will require a lot of trust and transparency as we deal with the data, because it will now be seen. We will see the slicing and dicing. It will be almost real time. You don't want an environment that does not encourage this, right? But not everyone's going to be ready for it, right? Like you said, David, they will feel they will lose their jobs. We can lose jobs if we don't do anything today, right? So it's really about reskilling, upskilling. And the concept I introduced here, it's an analogy of building a new muscle. So at the leadership level, we gotta be encouraging the culture where we're building a new muscle here, right? At the management level, and I'm talking people managers here, in the anywhere workplace, you have to be ready to manage a hybrid workforce, which means you're managing 1,000 bots and people. Very different skill. So whether it's working from home, working in the office, the bots are 24/7. Okay, there are ways to manage bots, right? Believe it or not. Yes, there's governance, there's an exception queue and all that. It's a different skill, right? So
it sounds like science fiction to me, but this is happening. Yeah. Okay.
But this is happening, right? In IBM in the Philippines, we're managing thousands of bots, in the backyard, right? For not only Philippines, but other countries. But it's a different skill. Mental wellness is not in a bot, but it is with the human beings. Just to give you an example, right? So very different. So it's also about skills and the degrees. Now let's go to technical skills. Technical skills, this is the more obvious one. Machine learning skills, data scientists, you need that. You need, people who run are good at the infrastructure, IT operations, etc. Right? Okay, we're there. The data modelers will be important, right? But what's also key? The soft skills. In general, the skills are now about creative problem solving, critical thinking, right? The kinds of people, Scott mentioned this earlier, you want to train the model so it gets better as it grows, right? Think of it like a baby, nothing. You teach it as you go, and it gets really, really, really better. But it's up to the one who trains the model, okay, on top of the compute capability to really get good at it, right? The one who trains the model are the domain experts, meaning, are you the business analyst? Are you the fraud analyst? Are you the spend the spend manager, right? Are you the controller, right? So you are a domain expert in a particular area. Remember, go back to what is the problem you're solving, right? In our case, I go back to Shantanu's example, the spend. We had a lot of problems giving employee experience and management experience in, do I have to approve this and so on, right? So this kind of feedback you process. When you now feed it into the AI models, guess what? As a manager, I'm only processing if there is an exception. I don't need to approve so many, but they will also tell me, a bot will tell me whether somebody was approved and do you want to take a look at it, right? So it's now a very different mindset, right? It's taking control away, but with ability to control back. Think about it that way. Now, what are we doing? I go down even further. Our next problem, let's say we reskilled everybody, we retooled everybody. Our next problem is gonna be the next generation of talent. So as IBM, as part of our CSR education program, we're going out there through our Pathways to Technology for early college, high school, as early as their curriculum in senior high school in grade 10, 11, we're already embedding the soft skills and these hard tech skills so that we learn and give them the exposure to industry partners, like many of you here in Finex are open to become industry partners. We give them real mentorship with these kinds of people who actually use AI every day or deal with data every day, with cloud, with IoT. And they learn so that when they get even just 2 years after high school, they can actually get to these kinds of jobs, right? So we are doing our part and we're scaling this. It's an open platform. We have even users all the way to Cordillera. So we hope we are building the next generation of talent. We are impacting policy as well so that there is ethics and trust in AI. Okay.
True. Agree with you 100%. It's all about human talent, human skill at the end of the day. Technology will not lead the organization. It's still humans that will lead the business, humans, leaders, not just humans, but leaders, good leaders that will lead the organizations towards success. All right. That's a lot to chew on. We're way past our lunch hour and we want to be quick. So we have some time for maybe 3 or 5 questions. Let me go through some of these already. Some of you have sent them through our Q&A box. And yeah, I like this one because we didn't have much time to talk about it. Cybersecurity. Okay, as we shift focus to AI, data becomes increasingly valuable. How do we beef up cybersecurity to protect data from hackers? Interesting question. As data is digitized increasingly, it also becomes vulnerable, right? Eileen, cybersecurity solutions, things to watch out for, because we get carried away with this. Yeah, yes. But security is important.
I'll just give a very short answer. There's another study that will be helpful for you, right? But let's attack it at the core, right? This is my view of this, right? There are many technologies you can get for cybersecurity, but I will also tell you now, Unless you have an infinite budget, okay, it can really, really cost a lot. So let's attack it at the core, okay? Let's attack the ones who are actually using data to not be vulnerable. So let's help each other with awareness of how to protect even us as consumers. How can we protect that, right? Amelie, I'm sure you can relate to this, right? So that, protect the core and, the user, so you have less problems to actually catch, right? Of course, the house will continue to be there. But then you go back, when you design your applications in the environment, even in AI, in digital, consider cybersecurity by design. So from the beginning. Right?
Mylene, let me ask you that same question, because you're in the trenches, so to speak. Online transactions, online payments, it's all about building trust, right? And a lot of people have not jumped on online retail just yet because of fear of being their finances being hacked or all sorts of other things. What have you been doing, and what are you hoping to integrate into the future, Mylene?
Yeah, just to build on what Eileen said, cybersecurity is very important. So we're building on that. It's very important to protect the consumers' data and privacy as well. You just have to look at what's critical to your strategy. The other one is, how do you generate a lot of insights on the information? Because, you will be able to generate growth out of that. So technology plays a lot on that aspect as well. When you pivot towards e-commerce and the related solutions. The other side of it is how do you enable digital payments and make it easy, for consumers or customers to pay online as well. Nevertheless, digital payments can also be used offline. So it works the same way. It's part of the ecosystem.
All right, Shantanu, very quickly, because we're trying to be quick here. This is the stuff of science fiction movies. As business processes become automated, data is digitized, it becomes also more vulnerable, and you have the scenario of things just getting out of control. I mean, what are the safeguards that should be in place?
See, I think few things are important. One is that what Eileen and Mylene spoke about is data security and our cyber security. Second is, having the right places in terms of compliance testing. So wherever you have soft spots, you have a very strong audit mechanism in place, which allows you to ensure that you are not going out of track. And second, and the third most important thing is that your regulatory and business compliance that you are doing, I think you will, by using AI and data, you will actually become more efficient in ensuring that the lapses that really happen when we are manually processing and connecting the dots, they actually reduce. So the way I see it is, it is both enabler as well as areas where we need to manage it better.
All right, thank you so much for that, Shantanu. Okay, thank you so much as well for those of questions that you sent, and we apologize if we couldn't entertain all the questions that were sent my way. I know we're all on a busy schedule, even if most of us are still working from home. So let me wrap this up by asking our panelists for their final thoughts on the future of work and how we can best transition to these new possibilities in finance and business operations. Let me start with Mylene.
Yeah, for me, we should not be afraid of technology. The technology actually enables growth. It enables, efficiencies. What's important is that we need to be agile and be open to new ideas and technologies, adapt to change, and most importantly, focus our efforts on customers.
Thank you so much, Mylene. Let me ask Shantanu now for his final words.
So, just in terms of implementation, I think start small and go from low level of complexity to high level of complexity. Focus on the most important either customer or operational issues, and key is have a roadmap in place on how you want to traverse on this journey. Used cases of the industry should be used as much as possible because they have been tried and tested as you're going through that journey. And important is, as you are on that maturity curve, there are people who can help you and meet you on that maturity curve in your journey towards AI and data.
All right. Thank you so much, Shantanu. And of course, finally, Eileen, your final words.
Yes, I just want to remind, let's build new muscle. Now that you get a little bit more familiar with it, let's build this new muscle, okay?
Right.
AI is here in the Philippines. AI is real. We can use it for the good and really drive business growth. So on that note, I know not everyone's going to be ready. Start anyway, right? And seek help if you need help. You can reach out to us. IBM, we can help you. I'm sure we have also peers, but seek help. On that note, if I may just ask David to just promote the ebook that we have shared with you, because we cannot reach all your addresses. Please take a look at that. Many of your questions are there. It will dumb down AI for you. It is expressed in very simple terms. It's easy reading. You can see there why AI is important, where to start, what to do, what are the considerations. Please feel free to share it with the rest of the organization. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
I'm looking forward to reading that. I'm gonna go through that right after this. Anyway, thank you so much. That was our panel discussion. And once again, thank you to Eileen Hudan-Huyao, Shantanu Gupta, and Mylene Casiban for sharing their insights with us today. I'm David Saldran of ANC, and this has been Leveraging Data and AI in Business, a discussion presented by ANC in partnership with IBM and Phoenix. And now I'd like to turn you over and back to the remaining part of your general meeting. Mark?
Thank you, David, and to our panel of speakers for simplifying AI and inspiring everyone to accelerate or already start their AI journey. Thank you, IBM. At this point, may I now call on Phoenix ICT Committee Chairman, Mr. Ray Lugtu, for his key takeaways on this afternoon's topic. Ray?
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and thank you to our esteemed speakers and panelists. Insightful indeed. Let me outline our key takeaways. From the IBM CEO study, what came out are 4 essential advantages of outperformers, CEOs and CFOs alike. Namely, leadership comes first, use of technology to differentiate, partner to win with open innovation, and cybersecurity as a foundation. And interestingly, Philippine CEOs, 65% of them, expect artificial intelligence to deliver results. And there are already practical and proven applications of AI in finance function. One is causation, examples in predictive spend forecasting, smart matching, examples in invoice matching, and natural language, examples in intelligent contract reading. And from our panel discussion, a key question we need to ask in order to understand where to start with AI is, what problem do you want to solve and what kind of data do you have? And finally, we need to prepare ourselves and our employees to acquire the right mindset, the right technical and soft skills to take advantage of AI. Again, thank you to our speakers and panelists. And back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Before we officially adjourn, we will raffle off 5 DOST approved hand-woven masks and 15 Consulta MD vouchers to lucky Phoenix members. Mike, Lynn, do we have the lucky winners? So there, congratulations to the lucky winners of the hand-woven mask. There are 5 here, flashed on our screens. From Likhang Maragondon. Next, can we flash? And here are the raffle winners of the 15 Consulta MD vouchers. 15 lucky Phoenix members. Congratulations, everyone. Please coordinate with our secretariat to claim your prizes. Now, to formally close this meeting, may I call on our president, Attorney Francis Lim, to adjourn the meeting. Attorney Francis.
Thank you very much, Mark. This GMMA, I think, is the most attended GMMA. So thank you to Eileen and his group and her group. It's great to hear from you. You have laymanized what an AI is. I think we have a long journey to go, and I hope that I was just texting Zone D, Garcia, and perhaps Phoenix and IBM can partner in a special project, especially for our young students. With that, I'm now calling the meeting to an adjournment. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. President, Attorney Francis Lim. Before we end, we are sharing with you again the QR code for the AI Ladder ebook for those who missed it earlier. You can, of course, scan the QR code on the screen or copy the link. Thank you again for attending our August GMM. Thank you to IBM Philippines. We will see everyone in the next GMM, and let's all keep safe. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.